So in this video, I'll be going over the 5 new head coaching hires around the NFL. We have Mike McCarthy for the Dallas Cowboys, Joe Judge for the New York Giants, we have Kevin Stefanski with the Browns, Matt Rhule with the Panthers, and Ron Rivera with the Washington Redskins. So 3 NFC East teams right there. So the only lone survivor was Doug Peterson. That's pretty funny. So I'll go over all those guys and just talk about them for a little bit, say whether I like the fit or not, think if they'll be successful with their new team and stuff like that. So we'll start with Mike McCarthy and the Dallas Cowboys. So Jason Garrett was the coach in Dallas since the middle of the 2010 season, but they finally decided to move on. Mike McCarthy coached in Green Bay for 13 years, going 125, 77, and 2, of course winning that Super Bowl in 2010. So me personally, I'm not a big fan of Mike McCarthy. I believe his resume is a little inflated due to the fact that he worked with 2 of the best quarterbacks, or 2 of the most talented quarterbacks, I should say, during at least the time I've been an NFL fan, in Brett Favre and Aaron Rodgers. So another thing that bothered me is he refused to give Aaron Jones a workload that was necessary for him to be successful. So yes, Aaron Jones was efficient under Mike McCarthy, but he never really had that huge blow-up season for him. And then of course, with Matt LaFleur this year, Aaron Jones, the running back, had a breakout year. So that, might tell you something about Mike McCarthy right there. But I'm sure he won't have that problem in Dallas because, of course, Ezekiel Elliott will get most of the carries there, basically 95% of them. So the one thing that leaves me optimistic about McCarthy this time around is that he's not doing the play calling anymore. They already said that's going to be Kellen Moore, who was the first-year offensive coordinator last year. I think had a pretty good year with Dak Prescott in the Dallas offense. So Mike McCarthy basically is going to oversee everything. I mean, some other head coaches are doing that as well. So he gets to oversee everything. He's not calling plays, apparently. I'm sure he'll have some kind of input with the offense, but it will be Kellen Moore calling the plays there. So I like that, and maybe that'll make him a better coach this time around because he wasn't too good with the time management kind of stuff and just did some weird things as a coach that I was not a fan of. So hopefully he fixes that this time around. So I personally believe that this roster with the Cowboys is too good to quote-unquote fail as a head coach, but I don't really see Mike McCarthy being the type of hire that's going to bring them to that next level, like a Super Bowl level team. So, I mean, of course, the Cowboys, I think they made the playoffs last year. They made it in 2016 as well. They were like 13-3, but they had a pretty early exit to, I think, the Packers, which is kind of funny, kind of ironic. But I think there'll be a team that's between like 8 and 12 wins over the next few seasons. I mean, I think Mike McCarthy's going to have a long leash there because if Jason Garrett can last for like 9 or 10 years, I'm sure Mike McCarthy can last for at least 5 years or so. So I do believe that the Cowboys will be a team because based off their talent, they'll be good enough. They'll be between 8 and 12 wins the next few seasons, but I really don't think they'll be a Super Bowl level team. I don't consider Dak Prescott a Super Bowl type quarterback. I mean, maybe if we put the perfect team around him, but for some reason the Cowboys didn't really play up to their talent level last year. So with the combination of Mike McCarthy and Dak Prescott, I don't necessarily see that as a recipe to be a top 3 to 5 team in the NFL, but I think they could be between like 5 and 15 and just be like an above average to pretty good team. I don't think they'll be an elite team, but I think they'll be pretty good. So I think this Mike McCarthy hire will kind of put them in the same spot they were with Jason Garrett, honestly. So I'm not too optimistic about this, but I don't see Mike McCarthy necessarily failing as a head coach in Dallas. Up next, we have Joe Judge, the head coach of my favorite team, the New York Giants. So he's the 4th coach of the Giants since 2015 if you include Tom Coughlin, so that's a lot in just a 5-year span. The Pat Shurmur experiment did not work out for the Giants. I think he was a pretty good play caller, but he wasn't really head coach material, unfortunately. So now he's with with the Broncos as an offensive coordinator there. So I wish him the best. I did like Pat Shurmur as a person, but honestly, he just wasn't a great head coach. It is what it is. So the GM, Dave Gettleman, is still in place. He is not going anywhere just yet, but I do believe he's on the hot seat entering his 3rd season as the Giants general manager. Joe Judge had a killer introductory press conference and definitely left Giants fans optimistic, myself included, after that press conference. Judge worked as a special teams coordinator and a wide receivers coach in 2019 with the New England Patriots. He worked under Nick Saban in Alabama as well, so he does have experience with great coaches, Nick Saban and Bill Belichick, so that's some great guys to learn under right there. Judge will demand the best out of his players and basically said in his press conference, I don't care if you're a first-round pick, I don't care if we're paying you a ton of money, if you're not playing up to the standard that I expect you to, you're not going to play. So he definitely set the tone in his introductory press conference. Judge will not be a play caller. That was definitely a question we had, if he would call plays on defense or something like that, but that's not the case apparently. So he will not call plays on defense, even special teams apparently. So he will not call any plays. He will oversee everything, just like Mike McCarthy, I think. I mean, Mike McCarthy might have some say offensively, but Joe Judge will be the type of coach that, overlooks the special teams, defense, and offense. He's not going to call any plays apparently. So Jason Garrett, the former Cowboy coach, will call plays on offense, and Patrick Graham, who was with the Dolphins last year as a defensive coordinator, will call the plays on defense. So Judge might have a similar fate to Pat Shurmur, unfortunately, due to the lack of talent on this roster, but we'll see what type of moves the Giants make this offseason. They might have around $80 million in cap space, so that's a lot to work with, and we'll see what the roster looks like next year. I believe Judge will have a long leash because I don't think the Giants want to have another coach in like the next 2 years, so I think Joe Judge will be given around 4 or 5 years minimum to see what he can do, so that's good news for him. In conclusion, I believe Judge might struggle in his first year record-wise, but if they gain talent on the roster and hopefully a modern and better NFL GM is hired when Dave Gettleman decides to move on or is fired, I think Judge will have a successful tenure as the Giants head coach in the future. So the wins might not come in 2020, but I think beyond that, it'll be better. And it'll definitely change the Giants' culture for the better. So the Giants have definitely had a culture problem, especially with Ben McAdoo here. I mean, a lot of guys were getting suspended. Guys were calling each other cancers in the locker room. It was bad. So I think he will have a successful tenure here in changing the culture, but it might take a little bit, maybe a year or two, so Giants fans have patience with him. Up next, we have Matt Rhule with the Carolina Panthers, probably the richest head coach out of all these guys now, and based off the recent contract he got. So he got a 7-year contract worth $16 million, could be up to $70 million, including incentives. I don't know what the incentives are, but just assume if he wins games, he'll probably make more money, so that's good for him right there. He brought the former LSU passing game coordinator / wide receivers coach Joe Brady to call plays, or maybe be I don't know who's going to call plays there, honestly. I feel like both of them might have say in what they do, calling plays. I think Matt Rhule is more of an offensive coach, and of course Joe Brady more of an offensive coach. I don't know which one will call plays exactly, but that's two good minds put together, so I like what they're doing there. Of course, he was, with the Heisman winner Joe Burrow, and runs a similar system to what Sean Payton does with the New Orleans Saints. So I like Joe Brady. I kind of wanted him as an offensive coordinator. He's a very young guy. I think he might be like 30 years old or 31. He's pretty young, so that's definitely, maybe it's a bit too much for him, but he's a guy who has a nice track record so far in his young coaching career. So LSU's offense in 2018 was 37th in scoring. They went all the way up to first in scoring just in a year. I know Joe Burrow really becoming a better player was, a big thing, obviously, but still, Joe Brady deserves some credit for that as well. So in terms of the roster in Carolina, I think they have a pretty good one. There are some question marks, obviously. Their defensive leader, Luke Kuechly, abruptly retired. James Bradbury's a free agent. Greg Olsen and the team recently decided to part ways. So there's that. There's the future of Cam Newton, and that's still unknown. He still has a year left on his contract technically. And the last video I made about the NFL, I did say, in my opinion, I do believe Cam Newton will be the quarterback for the Panthers next year, but it wouldn't surprise me if he's not either. So we'll see what happens there. Yes, his press conference did make him sound like a pastor and all that type of stuff. People made jokes about it, but I still think he did a really good job in his press conference, so Panthers fans should be excited there. They also have a new owner, David Tepper, who's analytically driven, had previous ties with the Steelers organization since 2009. I think he had like 5% of the shareholder, whatever it is, with the Pittsburgh Steelers, so he has some previous knowledge about the NFL as well. Rhule has all the control over his coaching staff. That was part of the reason he did not go to the Jets last year, is because he wanted full control over his staff. So he, basically brought on whoever he wants to coach with. I do think Rhule will have some success in Carolina, but a lot of it depends on the health of Cam Newton. So if Cam Newton has a year next year where he only plays 2 games once again and sits out, and then you're forced to play with like Will Grier or who's the other dude who backed him up, Kyle Allen, then it might be a rough year in Carolina. So that's depending on Cam Newton's health is a big thing if they have a healthy Cam Newton, obviously. That's a big thing. I cannot stress that enough. So in the event that they move on from Cam Newton and find a new quarterback, maybe they trade up for a Justin Herbert type of guy, maybe Tua Tagovailoa, maybe somebody, I don't know, but maybe someone in the draft. Maybe you have to wait a couple years until the team finally reaches their ceiling, but still, be patient with Matt Rhule. His contract will definitely make you wait, because they're not firing a guy on a 7-year contract after 2 years. So I do think he'll have a very long leash and doesn't really have pressure to win right away, so that might really encourage him to move on from Cam Newton. But as I said, in my opinion, I do think Cam Newton will be back next year. So I think the Panthers will do this the right way. They have good minds at their coaching positions and also their owner. So I do think, they'll make the right moves. They'll do what the right thing is. And as I said, it might take a while. I mean, if they keep Cam Newton, they might win as soon as next year. But if they move on with a new quarterback and a rookie quarterback in 2020, might have to wait a couple years. But I think in the end, it'll be worth it. So I think this move for the Panthers will work out in the long run. Not sure exactly what it is for next year, because we're still unsure of the quarterback situation. But I think eventually the Panthers will get this right. I think they did get this right, and I think soon success will come for them in Carolina. Speaking of the Panthers, Ron Rivera was the coach of that team from 2011 to 2019. He had a lot of success there. Of course, not won a Super Bowl, but had a Super Bowl appearance in 2015 and had a head coaching record of 73-63-1. So he was the first coach hired, I think, in this whole process. Went to the Washington Redskins, which surprised some people, myself included. So many thought that Ron Rivera would give the New York Giants a look because of the relationship he had with the Giants GM, Dave Gettleman, because they worked together in Carolina, but that wasn't really the case. I don't think Ron Rivera even had an interview anywhere else. I think it was just the Washington Redskins, and he was sold on being the head coach there. So Rivera was quick to join this team and did bring some good coordinators along with him as well. So they named Jack Del Rio as defensive coordinator, which I think is a great move. So Del Rio is a 16-year head coaching experience under his belt. You put him along with Ron Rivera, that's two really good defensive minds put together. So I don't know which one exactly is going to call the plays and whatnot, but who cares? That's two great coaches with two great defensive minds. They'll get it right. Their offensive coordinator, Scott Turner, he worked with Rivera 2 separate occasions in Carolina, then had some stops in Cleveland and Minnesota. He was the wide receivers coach for the Browns in 2013. There was a Browns receiver who had a breakout 1,600-something yard year named Josh Gordon that year, the 1 year he was in Cleveland, so maybe attribute some of that to him. I know Josh Gordon was crazy talented, but at least give his wide receivers coach some credit there as well. Then from 2014 to 2016, Scott Turner worked as the Vikings quarterback coach, worked with guys like Teddy Bridgewater and Sam Bradford during that time. Sam Bradford had like a 71 completion percentage one of those years, so he had a good year under that coaching staff. I think Pat Shurmur, the former Giants coach, was there as well. So Rivera himself is a great motivator and always seems to have his guys ready to play, and it's no coincidence that once Rivera was fired after Week 13, the Panthers went 0-4 the last 4 games of the year and looked absolutely horrible. They gave up over 30 points defensively in all of their games. I think they gave up over 40 points twice, actually, so it was pretty bad for them once Ron Rivera left. It showed you how much those players, liked him, even loved him, some of those players. So I felt bad for, the players there in Carolina, but sometimes it's just time to move on. So the problem I have with Rivera in Washington is that I'm not really a believer in Dwayne Haskins. I wasn't last year either. I wasn't really the type of guy that saw him struggle in the NFL and then decided, well, I don't like Dwayne Haskins. I mean, part of me thought he was overrated last year because he was in such a perfect situation in Ohio State. I wasn't really sure if his game would translate to the NFL. I wasn't really a fan of the footwork and stuff like that. And Dwayne Haskins definitely missed some easy throws this year. So, I mean, he had some bright moments, but also some moments where he did not look so good. So, of course, the future's not made up for Dwayne Haskins yet. He still has a lot of time to prove himself, but so far I wasn't really too encouraged. So, other than that, I do believe they have a strong enough defense. I think they have a lot of talent there, especially when they're healthy. I mean, this is a team that faces a lot of injuries every year. It seems like, I don't know what their team doctors and people that handle injuries do, but it's probably not good in Washington right now. So I think, I expect Ron Rivera to get the most out of this team, but it's a tall task given the injury history in recent years for this roster. So the Redskins should definitely improve from their 3-13 record last season, but I don't see them winning like over 8 games, more than 8 games in the next couple of years. I mean, maybe they have a breakthrough in 2021, 2022, but I think next year at least, I don't see them winning too many games. I think right now, if their roster stays somewhat the same, I think they go like maybe 6-10, 7-9. I don't think they have the talent right now to be a division winner and maybe even win double-digit games. I just don't see that happening yet. It is possible, but Washington is just a poorly ran organization, and for some reason, I like the him and Jack Del Rio combination on defense, but I just don't trust the Redskins. I think if any head coach is going to fail, I think it's going to be Ron Rivera, and I feel bad about that because I like Ron Rivera as a person. Seems like a really good guy, but honestly, I feel like the Washington Redskins, something bad's going to happen there, and I don't know. I mean, I could be wrong about this, obviously, and I am a Giants fan, so of course I don't want the Redskins to be great, but for some reason, I feel Ron Rivera's tenure in Washington will not go as he planned it to go. Lastly, we have Kevin Stefanski with the Cleveland Browns. He was the last head coach hired in this whole process, so honestly, I like Stefanski a lot. I was hoping my team, the Giants, will look into him as a head coaching candidate, but they didn't even give him an interview, so that kind of sucks. But Stefanski spent 14 years with the Vikings, started all the way from the bottom when he was like 24 years old, worked his way up to the offensive coordinator role. Of course, Mike Zimmer's the head coach there, so he wasn't taking his job. So Stefanski was upgraded to offensive coordinator at the end of the 2018 season, and then stayed in that role for the entire 2019 season. So a couple of Vikings players had breakout years in their offense, whether it was Kirk Cousins or Dalvin Cook. Of course, Dalvin Cook was able to stay healthy. That was a big part of it as well. But Kirk Cousins, who's had many healthy seasons, probably had his best year in the NFL this year. He had a 26-6 touchdown to interception ratio. I think he had a little over 3,600 yards. So for his standards, a very good year for Kirk Cousins, a great touchdown to interception ratio, one of the better ones in the league. And then Dalvin Cook was, had career highs and, a lot of the meaningful running back categories. So that was good for both of them. Last year, you would see the Browns coach, Freddie Kitchens, just randomly go away from using Nick Chubb, and it annoyed me because I owned Nick Chubb in a lot of fantasy teams, so that sucked. But now, maybe that Kevin Stefanski likes to run the ball, maybe they'll give Nick Chubb more work, but there's also that fear that maybe he ran the ball a lot in Minnesota because that's what Mike Zimmer preferred. I mean, apparently the guy before him, who was John DeFilippo, who I think is now with I don't even know where he went, honestly. He went somewhere as a offensive coordinator, but I forget. So the problem with DeFilippo is he was fired because apparently he passed the ball too much, and Mike Zimmer did not like that. So then Stefanski came in, I guess was given certain orders, and then decided to run the ball a lot because Mike Zimmer wanted it. So maybe now that Stefanski has the entire control over play calling, doesn't have to worry about Mike Zimmer breathing over his neck. Maybe he'll, call more passing plays and such. But it did work for him last year, so if it ain't broke, don't fix it. But we'll see what Stefanski does as a full-time play caller by himself. So with guys like Nick Chubb, Odell Beckham, Jarvis Landry, David Njoku, Baker Mayfield, I think Stefanski has a lot of weapons to work with here. The glaring problem for them offensively is their offensive line. So, it is possible to fix. All you need to do is just hit a couple of draft picks and make one free agency signing, and all of a sudden you have yourself a good offensive line. So I think, the Cleveland Browns definitely could have been a lot better last year, but I think Freddie Kitchens and their offensive line was a big problem, so that definitely held them back. But now they got rid of Kitchens, and hopefully they improve on their offensive line. They also have some talented guys on defense. They have guys like Denzel Ward, Greedy Williams, Myles Garrett if he keeps his helmet on this year. But they have other veterans. Christian Kirksey needs to stay healthy, of course. Olivier Vernon, if he's not cut, I think he's going to be cut. But if he's not cut, Sheldon Richardson, who also could be cut. But you never know. They have talented guys on defense and offense. Of course, the young guys I talked about, the young cornerbacks, hopefully they step up next year as well. So, look, Stefanski's only 37. I think he'll be 38 next year. So he's one of the younger guys as a head coach. I think Joe Judge is 38 as well. So I like this guy a lot as an offensive mind. I think Baker Mayfield, this is the perfect coach for him. I'm kind of happy they didn't bring in a defensive guy. I think Robert Saleh, the defensive coordinator for the Niners, had an interview with the Browns, but they chose Stefanski. So I think this is the best move for Baker Mayfield. If he can get that much out of Kirk Cousins, I think he can get a lot out of Baker Mayfield as well, and hopefully guys like Odell Beckham, Jarvis Landry, hopefully David Njoku can stay healthy this year. I think he broke his wrist or something last year, so he missed like half the year. But if they stay healthy next year, hit on a couple of offensive line picks and maybe a free agent signing, this team could be a lot better next year. So the Browns, like last year, have enough talent to win. They just have to put it all together, and we'll see if they can do it next year. I'm definitely rooting for Stefanski to succeed because I like him. I liked him as a play caller and stuff like that. So I have no problem with the Cleveland Browns. I'm still an Odell Beckham fan. I know I'm a Giants fan, but I still like Odell. I have nothing against him. So, I will root for those guys to succeed next year. And I think Stefanski, I know it's the Browns, and I know I said that the Redskins are a poorly ran organization. Of course, so are the Browns. But for some reason, I like Stefanski a lot, and I feel he'll do a pretty nice job with the Browns. I don't think he'll bring them to a Super Bowl, but I do think he'll have some success there in the coming years. So that'll do it for this video. Hopefully you guys enjoy. Let me know what you think about the new head coaches and how you think they'll pan out with their future success or maybe future failures. But we'll see what happens. It's going to be interesting, and hopefully Joe Judge is the best coach out of these guys, obviously. That would be nice for me and for my fellow Giants fans, but we'll see what happens here. So thanks for watching, and I'll talk to you next time.